Hello, friend. John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into consciousness, the mystery, and love. And in this episode, we're going into enlightenment and delusion questions, being authentic, loving louder, free will and destiny, meditation, and treading lightly. Let's have a quick review of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. First one, I didn't write this, but it's brilliant. And somebody said they should put it on a t-shirt. I kind of agree. It says, don't half-ass anything. Whatever you do, use your full ass. I think it's brilliant. I think it's really, I don't know. This is something, it's funny. I mean, that's great. That helps a lot when something's funny. But it just really highlights that thing about being committed and doing things 100%. When you do things 100%, you have no regrets. That's the way I live my life anyway. Whatever it is, I love 100%. I give 100%. If I'm doing something, I do it 100%, so that I don't ever have to look in the mirror and go, oh, maybe if I'd just done a bit more, if I'd given a bit more, if I'd been a bit more open, if I'd been a bit more caring. So this is just a kind of a version of that, and I think it's brilliant. Don't half-ass anything. Whatever you do, always use your full ass. Next one is, I love putting this one up. It's just red background, white letters, love louder. And it's just something very simple and impacty about it. It's just like, you can always love louder. That means that doesn't mean you're standing in the rain like John Cusack with the ghetto blaster over your head, you know. I don't mean that. I mean, it's like a call, you know. It's like getting out the conch and like summoning more love. You can always love louder. You can always give a bit more, risk a bit more, be more of who you are. That's what that says to me anyway. I think it's brilliant. And then the last one is a beautiful quote from Aldous Huxley. He's the guy who wrote Brave New World, among other great books. But I really like this part of a longer poem, I think. I've read the whole poem, and the way they've truncated it, just between you and me, I think this is better. They took out the boring bits. Don't tell Aldous. Anyway, it says, it's dark because you're trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. Lightly, my darling. I always imagine that's a very sort of Jolly Hockey Sticks kind of language because he uses darling so much. But it's beautiful, isn't it? And it's so true. I've, been reminded of this myself many times. In talking with people, I'll just send it through, about it, because we take everything very seriously. We take our lives very seriously. It's okay, we're supposed to, but this is just a very gentle reminder of how you can move in the world where you can feel deeply, you can have your heart broken, you feel so deeply, but you can still do it lightly. You can sort of tread lightly even though you're feeling deeply, because you can get sucked down into these things, into these very heavy feelings and emotions. So this is a beautiful reminder of it. Good old Aldous. Farm news, snow. That was the main. We had one day of snow. You'll see in a minute when I'm out in it. I recorded something out there in it. But yeah, it's gone now. It just came out of nowhere. It just came. Snow. It was beautiful. It stuck on the mountains. It's still on the higher mountains, but not in the valley. There's no snow left in the valley. And load of rain. River was surging, and then it all just kind of went. Hey, did you know that these podcasts are on YouTube if you're just listening to them? And as you will have heard, I like to go outside to answer questions. So you get to see me walking around. You'll get to see me walking around the snow for this one, for example. So yeah, go to YouTube, watch them all the way through, leave them on in the background if you want. Did you know I have a blog? Yes, I do. I write things. I wrote a very nice little thing about fun last weekend, and I sent it out in my little newsletter sort of thing. I don't think of it as a newsletter because that's always I just don't like that. But I like the idea of sending out friendly notes, which I do every Sunday. So if you go to the website furtheremergence.com, you can subscribe and get your little friendly notelets every Sunday, all going well. I am only human. I don't always get them out. If you want to write to me and ask me a question or just tell me how it's going, I love hearing from you. It's john@furtheremergence.com. I had two questions come in, and they're both they're linked together. So I'll put them together. The first one says, "Hi John, I'm enjoying your talks and outdoor walks via YouTube very much. I wanted to ask you if you could relate what your enlightenment experience was like. I'm guessing you've probably done this on Further Emergence before." Yes, I have. But I thought I'd ask. Thanks for your positivity and good humor, David. Thanks, David. And then I had another question, anonymous question. You mentioned delusion and that there are pros and cons. Could you talk more about this in another episode? So I put the two of them together because they kind of go together. I do talk about delusion a little bit in response to something else a bit later on, but these two go together. So as I say, this is the day it was snowing. I went out and recorded this as I was tromping around in the snow.
Well, I think it's important to kind of quantify what enlightenment means for you. For me, it started with Kung Fu, not the martial art, but the TV series back in the 70s with David Carradine. And I love the action and all that kind of thing. But I particularly liked Master Po, Grasshopper's teacher. Something about him that just stayed with me. In hindsight, I can see that it was a sort of lack of doubt. He had a lack of doubt about himself, but I didn't know it at the time. So then it was kind of a slow procession of this idea of enlightenment. I wouldn't say it was a burning issue for me. I was a teenager. I, had the raging hormones. I had all that stuff. But it was there. And as I'd come across things, and as I tracked the kind of progression of what enlightenment meant for me, it was a process of less and less bells and whistles, less and less miracles, less and less stuff, because I went from Master Po to kind of like Zen masters and kind of going, wow, these guys were actually real. This isn't just a made up thing on a TV show. This is an actual real thing. Real people were like this. Then Zen masters progressed to Indian masters, and all the time less bells and whistles, less miracles, autobiography of a yogi, that guy Yogananda. Then I, heard about Osho and that kind of thing. And you'd hear about these different people. I wasn't drawn to any of them really. I'd read them and I'd be interested, but all the time, the idea of what enlightenment was getting closer to me, and eventually, it led to like a 10-year relationship with Barry Long, and Barry Long just clicked with me. He was like, I could totally relate to him. And he was saying he was enlightened, unashamedly. And, he said lots of other things unashamedly. But the enlightenment bit was the bit that really, stayed with me. So to sum it up, I got as close to Barry as I could, meaning physically. Because he used to say that there was something about his presence. And I'd heard that before with other people who were enlightened, that, being in their presence was very helpful. So I was kind of into that. And it kind of seemed like it was an efficient thing, So I'd go to Barry's meetings. He'd have long, week-long things. Then he'd had this thing in Australia called a master session, and I'd go to that. That was like a 3-week thing. And I was doing everything in what Barry called his teaching, with the, I don't know if I had the very clear agenda of getting enlightened, with the idea of, the closer I got to Barry, the more chance I had of getting enlightened. And just being around him, seeing how he was, hearing him, even though he's a very different kind of personality to me. I mean, people have said that. They've like, oh, I heard you talking about Barry Long. I went and looked him up. God, yeah, he's very different. I don't like him or whatever. But it wasn't so much him, it was the energy. Because he was like Master Poe. He just didn't have any doubt. And I did. And it was a very fundamental doubt. It was a doubt about myself as a person. That felt like there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And if I got enlightened, I wouldn't have that anymore. Again, this is all kind of hindsight when I say this. I don't know if I could have put it in words like that back then. So, yeah, I didn't think I'd ever get enlightened, really. I thought I'd just, be hanging out with Barry for all that time. So I was back in Dublin, and I heard about this woman, Catherine Ingram, who was coming to give satsang. And like Barry was really hard on any kind of Indian stuff. Indian bullshit, that's what he used to call it. And but something, I don't know, I just went. And the first night I went, I was sort of sitting at the back grumbling, I'd worked up a good kind of head of spiritual, I don't know, pride or something. I sort of thought I knew stuff, because Barry told me. So I'm like listening to her talk. Oh, what's she talking about? Contradicting her in my head, all the way through. But it disturbed me. Seeing Catherine Ingram just disturbed me, and I couldn't put my finger on why. So the next day I went back, and I sat right up the front. Well, first row from the front, And I was listening to her talking again. Still feeling disturbed, not grumbling so much, more like going, what is going on? What is it about her that I'm finding so disturbing? And then it just hit me. She's enlightened. She's got exactly the same energy as Barry. Different, completely different person. Like completely different. You couldn't get two more different people. Because if you go and look up Catherine Ingram, who's still alive and doing her thing, and a lovely person, but yeah, you compare her to Barry, no comparison in terms of personality, but the energy was exactly the same. And it's like this whole thing took seconds, where I kind of went, she's enlightened, I know she's enlightened, and if she is enlightened, then I am enlightened. Right? So that caused a big freak out on the inside of me. The whole idea. How dare I? How arrogant, to think I was enlightened. But next thing I found myself on my feet, which is hilarious because nobody else was on their feet when they were asking questions. So I stood up and said, "Are you enlightened?" And she, kind of thinking like she'd be like Barry and go, "Yeah, sit down." You're making a big deal out of it. But she didn't. She kind of said, no, well, it's a very loaded term. I don't like to use those terms. And next thing I heard myself saying, because I recognize that you're enlightened, I am enlightened. And she kind of, I'd say she was like, who is this guy? So, and that was it. Job done. It's never changed. And it was, there's so many things that are written about enlightenment, and like everything is the same and everything is different. That was so true for me. Everything was completely different and everything was completely the same at the same time. It was so strange. What else? There's another one before enlightenment, carrying water, chopping wood. This is a Zen one. And then after enlightenment, carrying water, chopping wood. That was so true for me as well. It's just what had changed was I didn't have that question anymore. I was exactly like Master Po and every other enlightened person I'd ever read about. I couldn't do any tricks. I still can't do any tricks. But I don't have that question in me anymore. I'm not looking for anything. Certainly not looking for enlightenment in the way that I was before. I've no question about it at all. And I've been through like lots and lots of different things. Like I continued to grow. I continued to change. I continued to work through my unconsciousness. But that fundamental question never returned. You know, and like it's pretty soupy and black inside when I close my eyes, and there's very little constant. But that is constant. That never changed. In all these years, that was late August 2000, no, 1996. So that's like coming up on 30 years. Never changed. So, where does delusion fit into that? Well, my book, May a Noise, is all about this. It's all about the process of what happened when I got enlightened and what happened after it. Because the first chapter is the getting enlightened story. And then the rest are, well, it goes back and forth in time, but it's about what it was like living with that. Because living with it was a process as well. Initially, again, I was kind of freaking out. All sorts of things happened in my life. But I was I thought it wouldn't last. I thought it was just like any other kind of thing that had happened. I didn't really trust it. But as time passed, I realized, oh, this is different. This is a fundamental change in me. And I felt so free. Not in a euphoric kind of freedom, but I was just so happy to be free of this question, Like I describe it in May Noise as like I felt like I was on a hook that I didn't even know I was on. And getting enlightened was taking myself off that hook, and then the hook disappeared and it never reappeared. So normally I'm pretty chatty about things, but for some reason I felt like not to talk too much about this one. So I didn't. And it wasn't probably I did write to Barry and tell him about it, just to check, because I thought if anyone is going to, see if I'm kidding myself here, which is where delusion comes in. If I'm kidding myself here, if I'm deluded, Barry will spot it and he'll tell me in no uncertain terms. But he didn't. He didn't say that. He didn't at all. He was very kind about it, actually. So, yeah, about a year later, I was talking to somebody, or maybe it was earlier. Doesn't really matter. I heard them kind of going through a difficult time, and it was very simple. To me, it seemed very simple. It was like, oh, if they were enlightened now, they wouldn't have a question about it. So I told them I was enlightened. And yeah, it didn't go well. There was a kind of separation. There was a kind of a quiet kind of judgment of, you're kidding yourself. You're not enlightened. And it's such an unusual thing to be enlightened, because I don't actually need anything from anybody. I don't need anyone to agree with me, because like it really is just between me and me. So I kind of was surprised that they felt like I had put them in the position of wanting them to agree with me, which I didn't. I was only saying it to them because I thought it might help. In the way that being up close and personal to Barry had helped me, even though it didn't happen in front of Barry. I know all the time I spent around Barry led to it. And that process happened a number of times where I would say it to people, but within a relatively short period of time, I realized, oh, this doesn't go down well with people, and it's not having the effect that it's not helping them. It's making it worse, in fact, and it's not nice that they think I'm an idiot. I don't feel good about that. It doesn't make me feel good. So I didn't do anything. I didn't say it to anybody else for years. Like, as I say, it happened in '96. I didn't write May and Noise until 2011. So I don't know what the sums are there, but it's many years, for 15, 16 years, something like that. And I was quite nervous when I wrote May and Noise because I thought it would be a backlash of, how dare you? Which is the thing about enlightenment, is that it is such a personal thing, If for you enlightenment is being able to do lots of great tricks and magic and levitate or whatever, never be unhappy, never be miserable, if that's what it is for you, great. Go for it. It wasn't for me, because the closer I got to Barry, I think Barry said he was never unhappy, never up or down. He'd get angry and stuff, but I think it passed. I didn't really care about that stuff, though. I just wanted that thing that he had. Not his thing, I just wanted it for inside me. So for me, I got what I wanted. So I have no more wanting in that regard. And yes, I've been happy and unhappy, and I've had my heart broken. I was suicidal. I wrote about that in May and Noise as well, which was amazing to be in that level of emotional distress. And I would still kind of, I was still checking in, because there were many parts on the inside, still checking in and going, am I still enlightened, even though I feel like this? Like, it was there, just solid as, unchanging, yep. So it's kind of timeless. It's a little bit out of time, beyond time, for me. But that's me, right? So between me and me, all is good. I'm enlightened, no question. I don't I'm not looking for it. I'm not looking for any more than that. But that's me. If your checklist, because that's what I discovered, people have a checklist for enlightenment. And if your checklist has things on it that I don't have, well, that's fine. It really doesn't make any difference to me. And I'm fully behind you to go and get everything you need on your checklist. From where I am, I suspect that the core issue is exactly the same. But it doesn't matter. What matters is you go and find someone who is what is enlightenment for you, and go and be as close to them as you can. That's what I, would advise. So if you find somebody who is who has all the things that you see as enlightenment, then go be with them. Be as close to them as you can, because Barry was right. There is a thing about being close and being in their presence. You get to sort of see what the lived enlightenment is, and that affects your system. It stops you putting the person on a pedestal or separating them away from you, and it brings them closer. And the closer you bring them to yourself, the more you can get it for yourself. Something will rise up in you to meet it. So the idea of delusion and how it fits in with all that, it's a little bit like the placebo effect. People they talk about the placebo effect like it's a bad thing, like, oh, that was just a placebo effect, Your cancer is only cured because it was a placebo effect. Like, well, what do you want? Do you want the cancer, or do you want the um, do you want to have it that's not a placebo? Whatever the opposite of placebo is. It's a little bit like that with delusion. People kind of go, "Oh, you're deluded," like we're all deluded. Like delusion is such a derogatory thing, and it to me it seems like it's lacking a real understanding, a real like facing into what the experience is, because it comes from this idea that there is a real reality. Like here I am standing in the snow, um, in this beautiful countryside, and it's so believable. This is so believable that this is real. Okay. Now, if I happened to be in a virtual reality setup that was as believable, would it be real? Would the virtual reality thing be real? Or would there be a greater reality when I took the mask off or the suit off or whatever gizmo I had? So, is this real? I don't think so. It is and it isn't. But the thing is, because I'm in this one, I sort of it's very easy to sort of feel like we're all sharing this one. We're all standing on a little, planet, little people on a big planet, which isn't my experience at all. Not directly. And I go into all of that in my other book, The Gentle Snap, about deconstructing reality. Okay, this is not a book sales drive, even though, yeah, go and buy them. So in a way, this is all an illusion. And the idea that we're sharing the same, we're actually having the same experience is not necessarily true. I have no proof of that. I only have proof of my own experience. So just like if I'm talking to somebody who thinks the world is terrible, people are awful, and everyone's out to get you, that's not my experience. But if I'm talking to somebody like that, I don't think that they are wrong. I think that's true in their experience, in their reality. That's what's going on. So I'm like, okay, and I don't have any. I don't want to try and convince them that no, that's not the real reality, because that's where all the conflict comes from. Is this idea that there's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's the real truth, and let's fight about who's actually living in the real truth. That's where the idea of delusion comes from. It's part of that same dynamic. It's like you are not in touch with the real reality, and there is no real reality. There's just your reality. It's just you watching this thing or listening to this thing. That's the only reality you know. I think it's the only reality I know. The reason I'm saying I think is because I don't know what your experience is. I've never looked out of your eyes. I've never lived inside your body. And I've never lived inside anyone's body or looked out through anyone else's eyes. I've just got my experience. So the idea of delusion is that there is a real experience and you're, pretending that it's not true, which isn't the case. What we call reality, and when people say get real, or, coming back to reality, they're actually talking about consensus, which is a different thing, which is like, this is what we all agree on. Like, this is the color red. We all agree that this is the color red. And there's a big space there in that to kind of feel like that what we call the color red is actually a thing, which it's not. It's a consensus. Again, I've never looked out of someone else's eyes to see if their experience of the color red is exactly the same as my experience of the color red. So when you get over that, when you get past that idea that, I don't want to be deluded or whatever, I don't have that at all. I kind of more think of it in terms of, is this, I don't care whether I'm deluded or not. Does this serve me? By that, what I mean by that is, does this make me feel good? Like I choose to think about the world in a certain way, in terms of the future, and in terms of goodness and gentleness and kindness. I choose to think that those are all real and important. I could be completely wrong, but thinking about the world in that way makes me feel good. So I don't care whether I'm deluded or not. I just choose I choose my delusion if you want, or if you don't really believe in delusion, like me, then I choose the reality that I want, and I steer my little ship in that direction, always, in the one that I want. And I don't care whether I'm kidding myself or not, because it makes me feel good. And really, that's the only thing that I've got control over, is how I feel on the inside.
Okay, as I say, the snow is gone now, but it was just a moment, lovely moment. So this is another question. This person says, I'd love to know your thoughts on fate, destiny versus free will, John. Thank you. So, off to the beach for this one.
Well, I don't really think destiny is a real thing. But then mostly I'm not into it because I don't like the way it feels. It makes me feel a bit helpless and like, what's the point? And I'm not involved. I'm just almost an observer of my life. But I also don't think it's real, because I think it comes from the hindsight. You look back on things and go, oh God, no, I was just destined to do that thing. I was destined to meet that person. I was destined to get that job, or I was destined never to get that job. I think it's a hindsight kind of thing. And I think free will is, I think that's, I don't really think in those terms, but I think you've got like an opportunity to choose all the time, in a way. I mean, most things in spiritual life are kind of paradoxical in my experience. Um, I definitely think nothing is random. I don't think it's chaos. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mostly think that. that nothing is random because I like the way it makes me feel. Uh, it's like what I was talking about to do with delusion. I've no proof that is, again, my own experience. I've no proof that everything is that everything does have meaning. I don't have any proof of that. Probably never will. You can look back in hindsight and imagine proof, but not real proof, not definitely proof. But I don't really care about that. I only care about how it makes me feel. And if I think everything is just random, it's just chaos, and nothing has any meaning, I don't like that way that makes me feel. So I just choose to. I have no proof that that's true either. There's no proof that it's all chaos either. So I just go with what I like, what makes me feel good. Because when I think everything's just random, I feel powerless and just an observer of the train wreck of my life, because that's what it looks like when everything's chaos. And if when I think of it, it all has meaning and it's all significant, then I'm like super engaged. I'm wondering, what does that mean? Why did that happen? Where does that fit in? What am I trying to get my attention about? All this kind of thing. It's great. I'm totally enjoying it. Makes me feel great. Makes me feel powerful. Because I'm involved. So yeah, not a big fan of the idea of destiny. Free will. Well, I don't know what the opposite of that would be. I suppose that better be destiny, would it? In which case, we're back to that. So no. And you have the choice all the time of coming through or not. I think that's where I kind of fall. I'm not wild about free will, because for me it's about consciousness and unconsciousness, and I can't help but want to be more conscious. It's just part of me. So I'm always becoming more conscious. I'm always engaged in that. I think everyone is, to a greater or lesser degree, but they mightn't be conscious of it, which is a bit of a contradiction. So yeah, no, not a big fan of destiny. Free will, I kind of think of that as consciousness and unconsciousness.
This is in response to the question I posted on Instagram. What's the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment in your spiritual life? One word answer for this person: authenticity.
Well, that depends on whether you're talking about you being authentic or people being authentic. If it's other people being authentic, well, that's just a recipe for unhappiness if you're looking for people to be authentic, because authenticity is not a constant in other people. Sometimes people will be incredibly authentic, and then other times they'll be very not authentic. And if people's authenticity is a challenge, is what the challenge to your spiritual life is, then it's not actually about that. I don't think it's about letting go of wanting people to be a certain way. If it's for yourself, though, I would use the feeling of like I'm not being authentic as part of your kind of spiritual inquiry. Like who is it that thinks you're not being authentic? And I don't mean like somebody outside you. I mean, what is it in you that thinks you're not being authentic? Because that's a self-reflective thing. To think that you're not being authentic means there's some part of you looking back on yourself and judging you and going, "Oh no, I was being fake there," which is a way like your mind can kind of hear spiritual ideas, the idea of authenticity, and kind of wrap itself around them, and then just start giving you a hard time about it. Which paradoxically, it's also true. Like you can also self-reflect and go, I was just being robotic. That was just my mind just saying things. I was just like parroting stuff. Nothing I said there was real. It wasn't a true expression of me. That can be true as well. The beautiful thing is, though, if this is an issue for you, there's always another moment. There's always a new moment. It's not like we're not written in stone. We're changing all the time. So if it's coming up for you, you can just keep aiming towards being a bit more authentic, which is to say a bit clearer and a bit less robotic. Meditation helps because meditation helps with seeing your roboticness. You can hear your mind just churning over things and being set off by things. Whatever your own pet little thing is, you can hear your mind kind of going, oh yeah, getting revved up now. I'm gonna get into my thing about climate change, or I'm gonna get into my thing about reproductive rights, or I'm gonna get into my thing about homelessness, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Your mind kind of has little set pieces that it just likes to trot out. My mind, anyway, and I hear other people doing it. So if you can hear that, then you can stop it. Because one of the most powerful things you've got in your spiritual life is pause. Is just to pause. When you're about to sort of say the robotic thing, just pause. You can still say it, but just putting that pause in just stops it from being automatic. I suspect, though, you're being a lot more authentic. You're being authentic more often than you're giving yourself credit for. And I'd watch out for your mind just getting involved in that and going, oh my God, I'm being so unauthentic. You probably aren't. Not as much as it feels like you are.
Add one more in response to what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life at the moment. And this person said, knowing meditation is so helpful, but not doing it.
Well, I think I have a good one for this one. It depends why you want to meditate. If you're meditating for consciousness and for your spiritual life, then this will help. Because really what the point of meditation, or the how it's helpful, is that you get to self-reflect on see your mind in action, see your mind doing its thing. So what you can do is you can turn the fact that you're not meditating as much as you would like to, you can turn that in itself into a meditation. So what I suggest you do is set a little alarm that goes off every hour and a half, yeah, roughly every hour and a half. And the point of the alarm going off is not so that you meditate. It's so that you catch your mind where it's at when the idea of meditation comes up. Because the reason we don't meditate is momentum, is because our mind kind of goes, it's not convenient to meditate. I've got much more important things to do than meditate. I'm in the middle of something, this kind of thing. So if you set your little alarm to go off every hour and a half throughout the day, and every time it goes off, you are thinking, you'll be triggered to think about or to see, it's almost like a freeze framing your mind, to see what your mind is thinking about in regard to meditation. You'll get to hear the excuses. You'll get to hear the, oh no, I'm a very busy and important person. I don't have time for this. It doesn't suit me now. You'll get to hear all that. And what you're getting to hear is the momentum. Now you do that for a week. By the end of the week, you will find that you know a lot more about why you're not meditating as much as you want to. And that will make it easier for you to steer yourself towards meditation a bit more. Because what you'll find is one day the alarm will go off and you'll hear the reasons why you shouldn't meditate. And some part of you will just go, well, you know what? I think I'm just going to meditate anyway. And you might go another couple of days and it might happen again. And over time, you'll find that you're meditating more. But let me know how you get on with it. I could be wrong.
All right, that's all I have for you this week. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.